Antonio and Luz, however, wouldn't live to see justice served for their grandson, Antonio and Luz Rodriguez. In 2005, 80-year-old Antonio Rodriguez and his 77-year-old wife, Luz, were living in Cleveland, Texas. Cleveland is a small town that was known to be relatively safe and free of crime, averaging only one murder per year, and only a small percentage of their murders go unsolved. Antonio Zamora Rodriguez was born on August 8, 1924. In 1943, when he was 19 years old, he enlisted in the United States Army to fight in World War II. His wife, Maria de la Luz Rodriguez, was born on September 20, 1927, and she was described as a selfless woman who would do anything for anyone. The two of them opened a grocery store when Antonio returned to Texas. The couple had 10 children and were known to be extremely generous to everyone in their community. Antonio and Luz ran a small but popular Mexican food restaurant out of their home for decades. The restaurant became a staple in Cleveland, and members of the community highly respected the couple. In the early 1990s, the couple decided to retire so they could spend more time with their family, especially their grandchildren. By the early 2000s, the Rodriguez's children checked in on their parents a lot as they were getting older and began experiencing some mild medical concerns. At this time, Carolina, the couple's youngest daughter, was checking in on her parents up to 3 times a day, every day. In 2004, one of Antonio and Luz's grandsons, Bernardino, was killed. Bernie, as he was called by loved ones, was described as his grandparents' baby, and his murder was especially hard for them. He was only 30 years old at the time of his death, and he had 2 young children. On October 29th, 2 men allegedly struck Bernardino repeatedly with a hammer and an axe over what was considered to be a grudge. Bernardino's body was left in the men's home for 2 days, and during those 2 days, the men went to Walmart to purchase a tarp, duct tape, and cleaning supplies to hide his body and clean up the crime scene. They then buried him in a rural area in a shallow grave. By November 2, 2004, his body was recovered, and just days later, his killers were arrested. Antonio and Luz, however, wouldn't live to see justice served for their grandson. On the morning of April 14, 2005, Antonio went to a local convenience store to buy some scratch-off lottery tickets, something he and Luz did regularly since their retirement. Shortly after he returned home, their daughter Carolina stopped by to check on them. While they visited, Antonio scratched off one of his tickets. At around 10 a.m., Carolina left to pick up something from the funeral home that handled Bernardino's services before heading 25 miles south to visit her sister Norma's restaurant and pick up lunch for her parents. She arrived back at their home shortly after 12 p.m. and immediately noticed that neither of them had gotten the mail from the mailbox yet, which was something her father normally did every day before lunchtime. She thought they had potentially fallen asleep, especially when she didn't get a response when she entered the home and called their names. She continued walking through the house and eventually found them in their bedroom, but they were not asleep. Carolina found her father's body on the floor in the hallway outside the bedroom with blood running down his forehead. When she entered the bedroom, she found her mother's body in the bed.